my first podcast. First of all, my name is Ben Poulin. This is called And Now for Someone Completely Interesting with Ben Poulin. Before I get to my first guest here, I want to just explain a little bit about what the thought process behind doing this kind of show was. So I'm always going to bring a guest here, someone that I know, family, friend, someone from my life that has an interesting story or anecdote to share with us. I got the idea. I've been watching these TV shows and reading books like there's Jerry Seinfeld's Comedian in Cars Getting Coffee, Dave Letterman's My Next Guest Needs No Introduction, and I read the book Howard Stern Comes Again, which are transcripts of his favorite interviews. And what really stood out with all of these is here's these famous people talking about the most ordinary things, but to me had still probably the most highest entertainment value of them, and that most relatable stories too. And I thought, well, everyone I know has these stories that are just as entertaining, and I guess I just wanted to share that with people I know, because I started thinking about a lot of people that I've come across in my life, and I was like, these stories need to be heard. So that's what this podcast is about. And so now, for the first time ever, someone completely interesting. And I've known this guy here now for just over 22 years. We met January 6th, 1999. I remember the date because it was our first day at the Radio and Television Arts program at NAIT. That's the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology. So how fitting that we actually met at an institution. So he went on to a so far successful 21-year broadcasting career. He's currently hosting his own Facebook Live show. You can find him on the new Lloydminster Nissan Facebook page. His show is simply called Live with Kurt Price. And I am very honored, privileged to have you join me on my very first podcast. So welcome.
Thanks. No pressure. Now for someone completely interesting. And you're talking to Kurt Price. Wow. I will try to be as interesting as I can.
Well, I mean, if you're half as funny on this podcast as you are in real life, we should do okay.
Oh, no pressure.
Now, in 22 years, I mean, even the stories that we've come across ourselves as friends and the stories you've told me, I mean, we could delve into any infinite number of stories just from your career as a Bonanza manager.
Yeah, I worked at Bonanza. It was my first job out of high school. Actually, I moved to Lloydminster and worked at Bonanza starting in September of 1991. And then I became the manager, around 1994, I believe, or something like that. Okay. Worked my way up.
Maybe we'll touch a little bit on that later. But here's the thing. I want to kind of hit you between the eyes here. So I'm going to ask you a tough one. If you could pick one moment in your life, good or bad, or somewhere in between, that really affects where you are today, what's the story? What's the moment you would share with us right now?
I'm sitting in Humpty's in 1997, and I'm not married yet, but the lady that I did marry is sitting on the other side of the table, and I'm not happy. I don't think that I'm doing the things in my life that I wanted to do. I've been working at Bonanza for 6 years, I guess, not really getting ahead. And I had thought about, I want to buy a restaurant someday. That's what I was thinking to myself. But I wasn't happy about that. And so she says to me, because I'm so unhappy, what is it you really want to do? And I say, I want to work on the radio. I've always wanted to work on the radio. I've wanted to work on the radio since I was in high school. I just chickened out kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And so she says, well, why can't you be on the radio? And I say, because, I'm 26 years old. I'm not starting at the bottom of something. And it would mean going to school, because no one's going to hire somebody unless they go get this program.
Yeah.
And she says, well, why can't you do that? And that hit me between the eyes, because I was like, yeah, why can't I do that? I mean, I'm not really, I don't have any kids or anything. Why can't I do that? And so I start, thinking about going to radio school. And there was a guy from, I grew up with some relatives around Chauvin. And there was a guy that was a friend of my cousin's, and he was taking the NAIT radio course. And he saw the kind of things that I was doing, because what I like to do is just have fun, playing around with a tape recorder and doing kind of stuff like that and drive my whole family nuts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he says to me, Kurt, this is what you're looking for. Like, come up to Edmonton. I'll take you to Nate during their open house, and I'll show you exactly what everything is like. And so I did that. And if we're talking about something that completely changed my life, that moment when Crean said to me, what is it you want to do?
Mm-hmm.
Is, and it's emotional for me.
Yeah.
Because we're no longer together.
Right.
So I get emotional about that. But it also, I think back to how unhappy I was. And then how happy I got when I went to Nate. And my life completely changed. And, you know, when you go to Nate, you meet people like Ben Poulin. And there was, you know, there's a number of other people there as well. But you meet people who think the same way you do. Yeah. You know, you meet people who want to be creative. You meet people who are interested in, you know, I remember Dave Albright coming in one day and he stood in front of the class and he's like, how many of you want to be famous? And nobody puts their hands up, right? He's like, you lying sons of bitches. Every single one of you want to be famous or you wouldn't be in this room. And I'm thinking to myself, he's absolutely right. That's
100%.
I want people to remember my name. So that's that moment, Ben, is how I got there.
And well, that's just it. I mean, we're talking now. So, I mean, from the time you had that conversation, what you said, 97, and we were enrolled in January of 1999 is when we...
Yeah, I didn't get in right away. I had to wait. I applied and then they didn't accept me right away.
Yeah.
So
I got accepted.
I could have been in a really good class, but I ended up in the one with Ben.
I know. Fortunate for me, right?
I think that actually we went in the winter in January.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's when we started.
And so they take all the rejects and they put them in the winter class is what they do. So I'm in this reject class going to Nate and I'm looking around going, I am the only normal person here.
Okay. That's perfect. So now you get to that point, you get to Nate, and I like what you said about like-minded people. Cause I remember going through high school myself and thinking like this, not that I hated high school, but it just wasn't, I just didn't fit in that mold. But when I got to Nate, I mean, after the first couple of days, when you get to know these people that you're in this class with, and there's a big age gap. You were 26, I was 19.
Yep.
When we were,
and I wasn't even the oldest.
That's right.
You know, there was people that were older than.
There was that weird Newfie girl that she went off the map after because they don't have internet back. That's a different story on it. See, there's so many of these stories we could get into. So you'll probably be back for a few more of these podcasts just to delve into that. But I mean, we were all like-minded, and there was a lot of different personalities, but I don't think there was many times where we weren't on the same page with these people.
No. That's exactly what it was. And, you know, one of the things we had to do at Nate was do a magazine show.
Yeah.
You know, and you and I right away were paired together. So
yeah.
we did this magazine show that was the highest marks I've ever gotten in any course I've ever taken, actually. But I remember the first week that we were at Nate and we were walking around Nate and asking people for their most special moments and stuff, right? And that one guy says well, I was once the Ook. I was like, that's your special moment? That's the best thing you've ever done in your life? You were the Nate mascot, the Ook?
Which is actually just an owl.
Yeah, and that became our saying right through Nate.
I once was the
Ook. And we'd give people lines to say because we wanted to do a radio show. So we'd give them lines. We'd say, we want you to say this and say it with influence. So you listen to Kurt Price, you listen to Ben Poulin all the time, right? And one was like, those two should be caged. I remember that. Those two should be caged. They're crazy.
No, gauged.
No, that's what she said. Those two should be gauged. We're like, what did
you wrote gagged. That's what it was. The word was gagged and she read it as gauged.
That's exactly what it was. Those two should be gagged.
Sarah,
and it was those two should
when we combine.
That's genius writing, actually. Now that I think about it, I kind of peaked right there. Those two should be gagged. That's the splitter that ends all splitters.
I like how we have to mesh our brain together to collectively remember this moment.
There was so many, I remember us at Nate, and I love Nate, and I worked when we went to Nate. I had a job when we went to Nate. I worked for the grocery people.
Yeah, we were talking about that today with my wife.
Yeah, I worked at the grocery people. So I worked from 8 o'clock at night till 4 o'clock in the morning sometimes, picking groceries so that I could pay for going to college. And I'll never forget that every single person in radio had paid for it themselves, had come up with a student loan or something like that. And every person in TV was like, oh, daddy's paying. You know? But we used to, like, on nights when I didn't have to work, we would hide in the studio and wait for the security guard to come by. And once the security guard was by, we knew we had the place to ourselves all night long. We just record just over and over things over and over again.
We only had to wait till 8 o'clock because that guy was so old.
We'd hear him clunking down the hall. Shut the lights off! Shut the lights off! He's coming!
Oh,
but I remember sneaking out of that building at like midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning.
Oh yeah,
and just like and just loving life. Like I think back on Nate and very positively. It was one of the best times of my life. I like I said, I love the people there. We had no money at all. Like I was saying earlier today, we used to go to the bar, and because they always say, well, your first year in college, you should go off to college if you're going to be a doctor and just spend the first year just having so much fun. Well, when you're in radio and you don't have any money and you're like, boy, I'm having fun. I'm sitting in a bar with people from TV whose daddies are paying, so they're all getting drunk. And I got a half a beer that I got to nurse till 2:30 in the morning.
Well, we had that bar just down the street from where our
The Blind Duck.
The Blind Duck, and
Yep.
you could get a jug of beer for $5.
I couldn't afford $5. I didn't have $5. I'd go home. I lived with a guy named Tim. Like, and you want to know people who are good in the world? This is how I know people are good in the world. Okay, so I'm working at Bonanza, right, in Lloyd, and I'm not making anything.
Tim was a trucker, right?
Tim was a truck driver, and I got a job with Scott National. So very rarely in my life have I lived on one job. I've always had a second job. Even when I started at CKSA, I was doing mornings. I had a second job. I worked at Canadian Tire. I always had a second job.
Yeah.
So
and radio, just so you know, you need a second job.
a second job, yeah. So Tim used to pick me up at 4 o'clock in the morning. He'd drive from Edmonton, pick me up at 4 o'clock in the morning. We go deliver groceries everywhere. Yep. And I did that for 2-3 years and loved it. And I loved it because the first guy's name was Neil Godlin. The second guy's name was Tim. Ask me in a moment how he got hit by a tornado and it was my fault. And Tim was just this really down-to-earth guy. And he worked harder than anybody I've ever met in my life. And he was like, we became good friends. Mm-hmm. But then my life changed when I decided to go to Nate, and he was already living in Edmonton.
Right.
So I get in the truck one day and I'm telling Tim, I got to give you my notice because I'm going to be quitting in January of whatever because I'm going to Nate. And he's like, oh, you got a place to live? And I'm like, no, I got to find a place to live. Nah, you got a place now, buddy. You're going to live with me. And I'm like, that's awesome. Like, really? He's like, oh, yeah. You don't mind. There's a girl downstairs that I bang once in a while. But if you don't mind living with me and her, I'm like, well, what's the rent going to be? He's like, $200 a month. I'm like, $200 a month? He's like, and this is why I love Tim. Okay. This is why I love Tim said to me, when my brother went to university in Atlanta, Canada, he found somebody who charged him nothing for rent. And my brother is now, one of these guys that is making a lot more money than we work in radio.
Right.
So if somebody can do that for him, then I'm going to do this for you, buddy. And so I come home from Nate and there'd be a door like there, $200, I could have barely afford it.
Yeah.
And so I'd come home and there'd be a note on the door that says like, Kurt. And that's all I do. Like, Kurt, need the rent. Dogs are in the pound again. He had these two huge huskies that would always get out. So Klondike days, I think it was called at the time.
Yeah.
They'd shoot off fireworks. Dogs think it was lightning, chew their way through the fence, these two big huskies. And he was constantly getting these dogs out of the pound. And great guy. But yes, when I was working with him, he shows up on Thursday morning. I think it was Thursday morning. 4 o'clock in the morning in a brand new truck. And I'm like, hey, you got a new truck. What happened? Yeah, everyone got hit by a tornado, buddy. It's all because of you. I'm like, what? He goes, well, I'm driving back to Edmonton after I drop you off. And this car pulls up beside me. And this guy's honking his horn and everything. And I roll a window down. And he's like, your back door's open on your trailer. So I'm like, the back door's open. So I pull over. And I go back there, and you didn't flip the little latch. You forgot to flip the latch. So this guy saw it, and so I pulled over. And then when I got just outside Vegreville, a tornado picked me up and threw me in the ditch. I woke up, I'm holding the steering wheel, I'm on the passenger side. You would have locked that latch, I've been long gone before that tornado came. You're the reason I got hit by a tornado.
Nobody understands I'm laughing so hard because I met the guy once.
Oh, he's a
and
great guy.
With you talking like that, I can see him now.
Oh, he's a great guy. Awesome guy.
We're not exaggerating his...
No, I'm not exaggerating. He was awesome. And he works, I don't know if he still does that or not, but I kind of lost track of him. But he would work so hard and come home. And then I had no money.
Yeah.
I get home and he'd be like, Kurt, there's pizza here. Eat it.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for Tim, there's no way I could have gone to Nate. So people are generally good. And Tim Wardrop is one of my all-time, I should look the guy up because
well, I was going to ask
him,
you,
I wouldn't have went to Nate.
Have you stayed in touch with him? Or?
No, I didn't. And Tim, I think, might have married that girl in the basement, actually. now that I think about it, she might have got her grips into him. You don't mind me banging her once in a while. And that's, you'd have met Tim, so that's where he was.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. That's why I'm laughing because it's funny the way you're saying it, but that's also the way he talked.
Yeah.
Well, but I remember you would come on a daily basis, and there was always a Tim story. Story.
Oh, Tim had great stories. He had a parrot that talked. He was just the character. Love that guy.
I think he had a cat that farted too.
He had a cat that constantly farted. Yes, he did. He didn't have quite enough furniture, so I'd lay on the floor and we'd watch wrestling or something. A cat would walk by me and oh. And I had this saying, I was like, oh, let her rip tater chip.
Yeah.
And Tim could never get it. I'd say, oh, potato chip, you farted. He just could never quite get her down.
Jeez. So now you're at Nate. You've got
going to Nate.
You've got this roommate who's a character on his own.
Yep.
Maybe
Awesome
we can track him down. We should get him on the podcast.
Get him on the podcast.
Let's get the other side of the roommate story here.
So I had this guy live with me. Couldn't even afford $200 rent. My dog spent more time in a pound. One day he gets pink eye, comes home, pisses all over the toilet.
Jeez. Okay, let's get back. I remember myself, walking into the. I was a little intimidated by it. There's a lot of there was people with university degrees sitting in this course.
Yep.
Was there a moment you looked around the classroom and kind of judged or decided who were you going to be a pal with? Who was going to be your your circle, or did you have any kind of preconceived notions?
Not really, actually. I remember that day going to Nate because here I am. I grew up in Landis, Saskatchewan, small town. Mm-hmm. Have only had really one job, basically. Although I did work at Greek Classic for a while too. But I basically had one job, and I'm walking up to Nate. And you remember what really angered me about Nate was there was never anywhere to park.
Yes.
And I'm walking up to Nate, and I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this. Am I going to get a parking ticket at the end of the day? Because there's 2-hour parking everywhere. But going into that class, and I remember Dave Albright, great guy, another great guy, was pretending he was a janitor.
Not just a janitor, but a little bit of a slow janitor.
Yeah. And looking around the class and being like, I actually found the classroom. Just being happy that I found the classroom and wondering actually, yes, now I remember it. So I get in this classroom, I'm sitting there, and DJ Swanstrom walks in, and he sits down next to me, goes, "Hey, is this TV radio?" I'm like, "I think so." It's like, okay, I'm in the right place. It was DJ Swanstrom.
He's now a police officer in Victoria.
He's a good guy too. Great guy.
Yeah,
great guy.
Yeah, ironically, he became a police officer, and his nickname at Nate was Porkball.
Porkball.
He ate a lot of bacon.
He did eat a lot of bacon. He was a good guy, though. He was good. He had some preconceived notions, maybe faked an injury or two for insurance purposes, but he was a pretty good guy. And now he's a cop.
Oh, yeah. Who needs a step stool to look in the window if a guy driving a Corvette?
DJ, you forgot your cane. Oh, You don't see anybody running with a camera, do you?
No. Jeez. Yeah, well, we might have to put him on the list here, see if we
But
can
yeah,
track him.
and then I remember I was walking up the steps of the library one day, and you and Malcolm Skollick were sitting on a couch.
Yeah.
And
No, you and Malcolm Sokolic were sitting on the couch.
no, I was the guy walking up the stairs. And
I
you
know
guys were sitting on the couch.
It was one or the other. But
No, you're right. Because I was sitting
Yeah.
there with Sokolic, and I'm like, oh, man, this guy is driving me nuts with his Oiler talk. Like, it was all
He had
Oilers.
oldest Oilers hat known to
Yes,
man. I think
yes.
he bought it when the Oilers were established as an NHL. It might have gone back to WHA days. The hat was like in disintegration mode already.
Malcolm Sokolic had his own seat at Rexall Place. There was a place at Northlands Coliseum, Rexall Place, Skyreach, whatever you want to call it, but it was next to a pole, and it was the only seat.
There was 4 of them in the building that were
Yes.
single seats
And
like
he
that.
had one of them.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
his season ticket. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was a big Oiler fan. But
Well-
I remember, you walked up the stairs.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I got to talk to somebody else besides Malcolm here. Hey, buddy, you want to sit down?
Well,
or
the
something like
conversation
that?
was hockey, and that's always
Yeah.
been my draw to people because there's my common ground is hockey. The reason I got into broadcasting initially was I was going to be a play-by-play guy because I just didn't feel I was ready to take the step to be an actual NHL goaltender. That dream was quashed by my high school guidance counselor. Ben, I don't think you're good enough for this. So,
And then the play-by-play was squashed by everybody at Nate.
well, we were terrible at it because we could do the Ukes games, but I just remember saying, "It's too much to remember, like with names and stuff."
What happened? Here's the problem with doing play-by-play, Nate, because I was like, I like to be a sportscaster. Like, I think I could be a sportscaster, but I really want to be a shock jock or something like that,
Yeah.
right? And nobody that goes to Nate ever ends up doing what they thought they were going to do when they go in. It's like you go in one door and you come out the other door going, okay, I thought I was going to be a producer. Now I'm on air.
Well,
Or I thought I was going to be a writer, and now I'm on air.
I thought I was going to be on air, and I became a car salesman. So that's
But you go and you do the play-by-play at Nate for the Ooks games, but they give you the sheets like here's your list of players who are playing and what numbers they're wearing.
Yeah.
And then like 30 seconds before they drop the puck, they come up and go, okay, number 4 is not playing tonight. Number 8 is now wearing number 22. Number 22, there is no number 22. Number 24 has decided he wants to wear number 17. So number 17 is now wearing 48. And you're like, you end up going, Peter to Simpson. Simpson in the corner. Simpson throws it up front of the net. Peter's just wide. Anderson with the save. And he shoots it around the boards. Then it comes to Peter, who pushes it up to Simpson. Simpson down the far lines passes it to Peters. Everybody becomes Peters and Simpsons. So...
what's funny about that is because you were saying names like that, and I'm looking up, I can't find these guys anywhere, and you're
That's
like,
exactly what. Yeah,
you turn the mic off. I'm just making this up.
yeah, that's exactly what it was. There's no it's hard to learn when you're
What I found once we started sitting in the studio as an experiment, like you said, wait till the security left at night and then hide out in the studios and do our thing. Was that we were having way more fun doing that in the production and on air side of things. So
Yeah.
I mean,
and then you find your niche.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which turned out great. I think in the long run. I mean, I didn't stay in the industry as long as you have, but like from that, like, is there something you took from those days at Nate that you carried throughout your career?
Friendships, definitely friendships.
Right.
Sitting here with you, right?
For sure.
A lot of friendships. DJ's still a friend on
We-
Facebook. Although I haven't seen him face to face in years. He's in Vancouver.
Yeah.
He's, But when the biggest thing for me, I spent this summer in Edmonton. I lived in Edmonton and I worked full time at the Grocery People, and I wrote a movie. You remember?
Yes.
I wrote a movie called
Yes.
the
Silver Spoon,
Orangedale County Silver Spoon.
That's right,
Silver
yeah.
Spoon Murders. And so I worked and wrote. That's all I did. And went to a CFL game once or twice with my buddies.
We went to I
We
think
went to a
just
lot
about
of,
every
it was
CFL
like
game.
$8 to go see a CFL game. Like even I can afford $8 to go see a CFL
College
game.
Corner.
Yep. Can't buy a beer when I'm there, but I can afford to go.
Yep.
And when I finally did get into radio, when I finally got a job in radio, I found that radio was exactly like Nate. Like it was exactly what I thought it would be.
Mm-hmm.
When I started at CKSA in 2000, there were 8 radio announcers, and I was number 8 on the list. And it was exactly the way that I thought it would be, actually. You had a boss that pretty much ignored you because you were number 8 on the list, and said to you, if you don't hear from me, everything's going good. I remember Neil Bergen telling me that. If I don't talk to you, everything's good. Next thing I know, they're knocking on the door going, you're fired. But I didn't hear from you. It's Dad.
That did happen,
That did happen to me, yes.
Jeez.
They say you haven't worked in radio until you've been fired. I was almost fired the first 3 months I was there. So I was on air. I said, and you have to think, like, you have to remember here that I was going into a radio station that was well established, CKSA, had a number of radio announcers that had been there for a little while, and had gotten into basically a pattern, right? So they knew what they're doing. Then I come in there. And I love country music. I'm like today's country music. No, but I'm a country music fan.
Yeah,
like Dwight Yoakam and things like hillbilly music.
Yeah,
and so I go into the CKSA, and I'm doing evenings, but I'm doing country with some off-color jokes. Some like and people would tell me you should be on the rock station. Like you really shouldn't be saying that on this station. And I'd be like, but I'm getting great feedback and I'm having lots of fun. So I did I can't even remember the joke now, but it didn't go over well. 3 people complained. And so they came and said, like, there's a job in production. You can take the job in production or you can be fired. And I was like, well, I need a job. So I guess I'll take the job in production. Okay, great news. It comes with a $200 a month raise. Are you kidding me? So I worked, I did production for a little while.
I wish I was almost fired in radio.
Yeah.
Maybe I'd still be doing it
I
today.
got $200. I was like, I got to go home and go, well, the bad news is I'm no longer on the air, but the good news is I'm making $1,500 a month. Up from $1,300.
Jeez.
Something like that. I think actually, I may be exaggerating. It was actually probably 12 and 14.
Well, yeah, I was going to say it's not a stretch.
My first job was $1,200, and I remember when I got hired by Neil Bergen and this is 2000.
Yeah,
and he's like telling me all this stuff and about the job and everything, and I'm like, just like, are you going to give me the job? Like, is this guy giving me the job? I think I'm getting the job. And he's like, the last thing he says is, well, if you want the job, it's yours. I'm like, I want the job, and I jump up. And I'm all happy and everything, and I'm leaving, and he's like, you know what we need you to do? We need you to come in maybe 10 days before you start your shift and just get to know the board and everything. Oh, is that when I start? No, we're not going to pay you for that. We just want you to come in and learn so that you can. And that's what it was. So then I'm like, okay, I will see you, at the end of June, I'm all excited. I got a job in radio. And I put my hand on the doorknob to leave, and he goes, Kurt, yeah, there's just one more thing. I'm like, yeah. Don't you want to know how much you're going to be paid? Oh, yeah. How much are you going to be paid? $1,200 a month. Me just like, I worked in the oil field that summer. So,
yeah.
And there's just quiet. He's like, do you still want the job? I'm like, yeah, I want the job. I got a job in radio. You got to start somewhere.
Yeah. Me was a trip to Yellowknife.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. For not much more money.
But I did evenings. I did evenings on CKSA. I did like when we say evenings, we say 6 till midnight. And then the next morning you'd have to come in for the Lutheran hour. We had 2 church shows that aired at 7 and 7:30. And so you had to be in there to run the reel to reels.
Yeah.
Because they were reel to reels at the time. So put those on. And I remember walking in a lot of times going, oh, he's not going to start on time. And then the old biddies are going to call. And that was one thing you didn't want to do.
No.
Because if you miss the Lutheran hour, believe me, there's Lutherans that call the radio station. And they get angry. Lutherans are vengeful.
Tell an off-color joke, 3 people complain. Miss the Lutheran hour.
Oh, you're on your ass.
There's no side production job offered after that. That's amazing that this one little moment of you sitting in a Humpty's restaurant, just completely Humpty's. Like this is now like spanning almost a lifetime of, at 26 versus 22 years. Like you've almost been doing this for as long as you were alive when that switch went off.
Yeah.
Or that moment.
Yeah. And, not to take away anything from people who work in restaurants. It's hard work. Yeah. I'm telling you right now, that is a hard life to go down. I don't think that you can be in a restaurant without owning it. That's the way it's got to be. But I enjoyed it. Like I enjoyed my time at Bonanza. But it was, and the thing is, here's the thing. I wanted to buy a restaurant. I wanted to own my own restaurant so bad. And then I got accepted to Nate. And like 5 days before I was going to Nate, one of the guys who used to own the restaurant called me up and said, "Hey, that restaurant's empty now. Would you be interested in buying it with me?
Yeah.
Like, I'll buy it and you work your equity into it."
Right.
And I'm going to Nate. And so I had to make a decision right there going, do I want to do this or do I want to do that? But when I was growing up in Landis, Saskatchewan, the only thing that I could ever imagine myself doing was working on the radio.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to work on the radio. And so I get asked to talk sometimes at graduations, and things like that.
Yeah.
And they always say, well, what's your message going to be? And my message to a lot of kids out there would be to believe in yourself, because the one thing that I did not have was a belief in myself. So when I went to Saskatoon, to WABC radio, and the reason I laugh a little bit is because I'm in grade 12. My dad asked me, like, what are you going to do? Right. And I'm like, I'm going to go to WABC radio in Saskatoon, which is was at the time fairly expensive course. I don't know what it is now.
Right.
But it's also in the alphabet district of Saskatoon. So that's not a real friendly district.
Okay.
So when we went to the open house, there was a school on one side and hookers on the other side. So my mom is like, "This is where the school is." This is a radio school. There's hookers, and then you meet guys afterwards. You're like, "I went to WABC. Our favorite thing to do was to send songs out to Gloria the hooker, the redhead on the corner. This is for you, baby." And stuff like that. And so I was at WABC for an open house, and everything was going really good. And I'd already sent my tape in. You have to record some stuff and everything.
Yeah.
I already sent my tape in, and I was pretty sure I was going to get accepted. And then Don Scott, who's still there, by the way, and is a wonderful man himself, he came out and he said that this industry, this business, is only for those who are 100% sure that they can do it. Because you're going to eat macaroni and cheese for the first 3 or 4 years of your life. You're going to live in small towns that you've never heard of before. So you need to decide, is this what you want to do? I'm sitting there going, I don't know if this is what I want to do.
Right.
I asked my dad, it was a fairly expensive course. I think it was $6,000. And, my dad is on that bubble. He was on that bubble where, oh, you make too much for your kid to get a student loan, but, but he's barely making it.
Yeah.
Well, high interest rates in the 80s would help you out with that. You look back now and you go, well, of course he couldn't make it.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to spend my dad's money on a career that was going to end up with me sitting in Rosetown, Saskatchewan going, B4, B4.
Clickety click. Oh, 66.
B9. Grandma had a tumor, but it ended up being benign.
I actually think bingo callers would make more money than radio announcers too on the average.
Yeah, they probably would. So I ended up going. One day I just got up and said to my dad, wasn't going to go to, and I don't think there's anybody more disappointed that I didn't go to radio than my dad. But I got up one day and was like, my dad was working in Lloydminster, I think, somewhere in that area.
Yeah.
And I just graduated from high school, and I was like, would you mind giving me a ride to, I think it was Neilburg, and Dan can pick me up from there. And he's like, well, what are you going to do? I'm like, I'm going to go to Lloydminster and get a job.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget what my dad said. He said, "You're not moving to Lloydminster. There's nothing in Lloydminster but bars." But I ended up moving to Lloydminster anyway, which has become my home and is a place I'm very proud to call home.
I think maybe too on to add to your when you have those messages, like what I'm getting from this is that believe in yourself, but maybe just because it doesn't pan out now doesn't mean it won't pan out in the future. Because we're talking now, like 6-7 years later.
Yeah, and I'm
look
what is it that you want to do?
Yeah,
I want to be on the radio.
Yeah, so maybe just timing and life experience can help with stuff like that too. Cause
I think they say something like 65% of people who go to don't go to school right away never end up going back.
Right.
But going to Nate was the best thing I ever did with my life. Like I look back on that very fondly. I had a lot of jobs. Like I've had working at Bonanza was a lot of fun.
On that note, I'm going to say this. That might be the next time we bring you into this podcast, because that was the other thing. There was two things every day that we had from Kurt Price at Nate. There was the Tim story, the latest Tim story, and something that happened at Bonanza. There was a couple little Greek stories too there that you had, or sorry, what was the other restaurant you worked
Greek
at?
Classic.
Greek Classic. Sorry,
yeah.
Little Greek is a restaurant here in St. Paul. There, so
Yeah.
I'm getting Greek restaurants mixed up here. So, on that note, thank you so much for doing this and actually believing in me to do this, because this was made possible here, because when I put the idea forth to you, that was something you said, oh, yeah, you have to do this. You have to do this. So that really, it's something I've been thinking about for a while, but until I voiced it to you, was not something I truly believed was possible. So now it is here, it's happening. So
You got to follow your passion.
thank you so much for that. And yeah, it brings me back to something that I used to do. Like, maybe this is just a little hobby for now, but at one time it was a career, and it's a career I wish I could have continued on at, but
like me, well, unlike me, you had a family.
well,
That was the biggest thing that changed for you, was you had a family that you had to provide for, and radio is hard. Like,
it is.
it's
But
if you have a family and you want to advance, you have to make it. And you had been in the business for how long?
Just about 10 years.
Just about 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you kind of say to yourself, like, maybe this isn't, like, maybe I've had enough. And I think within 10 years of graduating from Nate, I look back now and there's like two people that were still in broadcasting after 10 years. Most didn't even, get involved.
I never had enough of the radio business. The politics behind it, that's a whole other podcast. Maybe one day that
Hey,
we can
you
get
want
into.
to talk about the politics of radio? Pour me another crown, because I will get into some shit that will make you puke.
So on that note, apparently there's a bottle of Crown waiting for us. Thank you so much. And once again, Kurt Price, you can catch him on the New Lloydminster Nissan Facebook page. It's Live with Kurt Price. And thank you so much for being my first guest on Now for Someone Completely Interesting. And I hope you found him as interesting and entertaining as I have for the last 22 years. Thanks so much.
Play us out, Sam. You've been listening to the Ben Poulin podcast. If you know somebody interesting, please contact Ben Poulin. You can contact Ben Poulin through the St. Paul dealership. You can contact Ben Poulin if you'd like to buy a vehicle. Please go buy a vehicle, because he's not making any money doing this podcast.
We did that because I haven't bought music licensed or licensed music yet. So thanks again. We'll probably in about another month here, we're going to do this again and hopefully find someone who's completely interesting.
Yeah, good luck.